Run the clock, Super 16 is the cream of the crop. College football time of year, don't stop.
You're adding this guy.
Just another go dome with the courage, heart, skill, and will. Bringing you the best 16, serving up a plate for the football fiends. Breaking the best 16 college teams. Football fans, it's the show with the dreams.
Ain't no bias, Chris Zorich breaking truth. Traded in the golden helmet in the past for a suit. With the tape, never lies, college ball, he's astute. Breaking the top 16, not the top 32.
I don't mean to cut you off like a Zorich jersey, but you ain't really grinding unless the jersey dirty. Hit the running back like a Mack truck behind the 30-yard line. It's game time. My team riding off the sideline.
You look at Chris like this with a fact checklist, going over college teams like a busy scientist. Steve streaking from his head like in his playing days. Super 16 polls on his show straight away.
It's the FBS, the best of the best from the ACC to the SEC. Pac-12, Big Ten, Mountain West, Sun Belt, and the Big 12. Open your eyelids. Who the best like the clock? Super 16 is the cream of the crop. College football time of year, don't stop. With Christopher Zorich, just another go dome with the courage, heart, skill, and will. Bringing you the best 16, serving up a plate for the football fiends. Breaking the best 16 college teams. Football fans, it's the show with your dreams.
Welcome, everyone, to the Super 16 Poll Show Special Edition, Special Bowl Season Edition. As you guys know, we've been having a chance to kind of take this journey for the last 14, 15 weeks. We've seen teams in the preseason, and we actually went through the whole season, and now we are at the most exciting time of the year for me as a former player, and I hope the rest of y'all. We got bowl season, so this is great. It's like the second football season for a lot of schools, not every school, but a bunch of schools that have a chance to kind of go on and have some success. We have a great show for you, and it's really kind of exciting for me because I'm going to bring you a great variety of guests that have bowl experience playing, going to bowls, coaching bowls, and now the executive director of the bowl season, which we're going to have a chance to talk a little bit about, because now there's kind of this overseer, so to speak, kind of like the Darth Vader of bowl games in a very positive way. My boy Nick, but it's just really exciting and really taking the kind of bowl season to the next level. But this is going to be great, and I apologize. We were supposed to go live a couple days ago. A lot of stuff was going on. Mainly, I'm moving, but that's a whole different story. So I apologize about that, but we have a couple shows coming up. Monday, January 3rd, we have our post-bowl show when we're going to talk about the exciting games that happened in between today and the 3rd of January. Obviously, most exciting is going to be the semifinals of the national championship games. But a little bit more importantly, we're going to have Notre Dame playing Oklahoma State. So we're obviously going to have a chance to talk about that post that game. But then also, and there's more, January 10th, which is the national championship game, Phil and I and some guests are going to be hanging out an hour before the game. And then as soon as the game ends, we're going to go live as well to kind of break down and talk about all the excitement. So that's what's coming in the next couple weeks. Hope you guys can join us. I'll be sending out a whole bunch of stuff out on my social media, but kind of want to get this show going because it's really kind of fascinating because a lot of folks might not know what goes into bowl games. I know my experience is great, but we have a chance to kind of hear from some others, but a lot of people might not know how a team gets accepted to a certain bowl. And I was fortunate enough when I was in college at Notre Dame, I had a chance to participate in 4 bowls. And for me and one of our guests, we've talked about this off air, those are some of the most exciting moments for me as I was a player at Notre Dame. So you get a chance to kind of experience the different teams, but a little bit more importantly, you had a chance to kind of go out different town, had a chance to kind of mingle with the opposition couple times. But it was just really, really fun experience. And so I kind of wanted to share that experience with everyone else, because these are great opportunities for these young people, because as we've talked about on the show many times, everybody doesn't go pro. I don't care if you're at Notre Dame or you're at Western Kentucky, right? I mean, everybody's not going pro. And so a lot of times these bowl games are kind of the last time these young men are going to put on these helmets, these uniforms that they represent their schools. So that, in a sense, is one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to share this experience with you, but a little bit more kind of how a team gets selected, what the preparation is for a team. I know as a player how to prepare for it, but we're going to have a coach on who's going to talk about kind of what goes into having to prepare your team. And a lot of times people just say, hey, they turn on ESPN and all of a sudden they find out who's playing what team, but there's a lot that goes into it. So, for example, I know several years back when University of Notre Dame played in the Hawaii Bowl, I know for a fact they actually worked the first pick. But what happened was, because it's so expensive to fly a team to Hawaii, there was another team that was supposed to go, but they said, hey, we can't afford, even though some of the bowls give you money to come. Obviously, it depends on what the level of the bowl is. So in that case, and I forgot what team it was, but that team couldn't afford to bring their whole football team and staff over to Hawaii. So actually Notre Dame wound up taking that responsibility, right? So you have stories like that that are very interesting. And one of the ones locally for me here in Chicago, I remember when Florida State played Northern Illinois in the Orange Bowl. I mean, it was great to finally have a chance to have a group of 5 school participate in the Orange Bowl. But it was interesting because there was a huge cost in it. And it was so interesting because here locally they were talking about the cost. And at one point, the athletic director at the time, he was kind of saying, hey, if you guys could get there on your own, we could actually give you tickets to the game. So there's so many interesting stories about what goes on during the bowl. So it's not just 2 teams showing up and actually playing. So there's a lot behind what goes on in these bowls. So before I get started, one of the things I want to bring out, our wonderful producer, Phil Tosin. Phil, we had a chance to watch some of these bowl games.
What's up, Chris?
How are you, sir?
We
Long
do.
time no see, by the way.
I know. We talk, but we don't see. It's great to be here. Bowl season is kicking off. Coach Prime put his head down, walked off, or glided off the field. His only victory, I guess, is getting that, top 10 recruit. But
which again is an amazing opportunity.
I can't wait to dig into that stuff, because you shine some light on that. And for that kid to course correct, that's going to be interesting. And all of these games and bowl season, especially these guests you have lined up, I'm trying, because I know one of the guests has his nickname up, but I think it might be some guy that I remember playing the game. So it was quite a good football player at that. And obviously Coach coming on and Nick. It's going to be exciting to hear this conversation. I'm excited about bowl season and everything that's going on. So to be here, we do apologize that we had to keep pushing the show. And if Chris was good, something happened on my end. So we apologize, but we're here now. As we say, the show must go on.
Absolutely. And, obviously Phil's an incredible producer, and really kind of wanted to really thank him, because my schedule's been crazy. His schedule's been crazy. And, oh, by the way, we have wives that have Christmas parties that we have to attend, which they don't tell us until like the day before. And so I'm like, dude, I can't do it. So it's just been absolutely crazy. And I love my wife, and we have a family calendar, but apparently she doesn't look at the calendar a lot. So it's like, hey, we have a Christmas party tomorrow.
Sets the tone. It's like anti-Coach Nagy. A wife should be the tone. Accountability all across the board.
Speaking about Coach Nagy?
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you give us like maybe a minute?
A minute?
And a half
I'll
of
go
what you
under a
experienced?
minute. Under a minute.
Is that possible? I don't even think that's possible.
For me, it isn't impossible. But today, with the celebrity guests that you've lined up, you know, the Chicago Bears are in a terrible situation with, you know, what every coach in the country is dealing with. And you see it with the NFL now with the COVID situation. And I'm not talking about how poorly he's coached. I'm just saying the obstacle now is going to be, are they going to have enough players to line up? Apparently their secondary is completely down, all the way down to, you know, we're going to have to pull up guys from the practice squad. My father, as you know, being a head coach for 33 years, a Hall of Fame head coach here at Walter Camp and the state, he always taught me, you coach everybody the same. The next man up mentality has to be believed. It can't just be something you say. So especially when on the high school level, here on the NFL level, these guys should be, you know, coached up and prepared. And hopefully there's not a complex defense like Coach Minter's back in the day that the Bears try to roll out on national stage again, Chris. It should be a lot of fun. So that's my Nagy's just word salading along, and I just think it's a detriment. The Bears organization, as we said, they should have cut this tie a long time ago and kind of course corrected with the ability to scout the replacement and give yourself an advantage there. But we'll see how this plays itself out. I'm not holding my breath, though.
Well, I have a huge shout out for the Bears this week. I was fortunate enough to participate with Bears Care, which is part of the Chicago Bears charitable arm. Yes. And I was out at a local veterans home on the south side of Chicago, which I did not know existed. I've been around the area, like literally it's around the corner. It's just absolutely amazing. And they had over about 200 clients there, and the Bears provided a lot of toiletries, blankets, sheets, everything that these guys are using, and men and women. And it was just kind of a great feeling to kind of, although I did not serve, having a chance to kind of tell these individuals, thank you for your service. And I know it's not a really big deal, but having a chance to kind of hear their stories and talk to these guys were just amazing. And so, you know, I just want to give a huge shout out to the Bears for allowing me to participate and really kind of opening my eyes to kind of what veterans need and the assistance that a lot of these folks need. Unfortunately, as with a lot of things going on in society, we just aren't taking care of the people that mean the most to our society.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. It's the one thing I think everybody talks about, but we really, if there wasn't veterans that have served this great country, then there's no football. There's no
nothing.
There's no nothing really. Exactly. So imagine. So it's sometimes you really do have to take a deep step back and see what you can do for some of these veterans. My father, again, had taught me a long time ago about the importance and how terribly, I know we talk about World War I, World War II, but the Vietnam veteran, how they were treated. I remember just listening to him and making it a priority if I saw somebody who had served in the Vietnam War, that I went extra out of my way to thank them, because I know they didn't get the appropriate treatment. Right. But that continues to be the case with Iraq and everything, and Afghanistan and the wars that we did. So it is important. So I'm proud of you that you continue to be that person that goes out of their way with the most important human trait, empathy, and deliver that to those men and women that have served this great country. So that's awesome stuff that you and the Bears are doing. So
absolutely.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So, although it's kind of crazy on the field, you know, I just want to let folks know that the Bears are still doing wonderful, wonderful things in the community. So that's really special.
Awesome.
All right.
And Navy beat Army, and I was disappointed.
Yes, we
were cheering for Army.
Talk about that. Yes. Oh yeah, exactly. Well, let's bring on our first guest. So we have Nick Carparelli, which I think is great because this individual is not only is he the man, but he actually got started way back when at Notre Dame. I mean, he was the ops guy at Notre Dame, and wound up being the ops guy for New England, the Patriots. So this guy has done a lot of stuff, but I think that one of his most important jobs now is having a chance to kind of represent the bowl season as a whole. We're going to hear a little bit about that, but he has an amazing podcast, and it's the Bowl Season Stories podcast. And he's had guests like Bill Hancock, the executive director of the college football playoff group, Tony Casillas, who was my idol when I was in high school growing up, kind of watching him, Tony Dorsett, Holly Rowe. He had Rocket on, kind of talk about his game experience or his bowl experience. So I just want to bring Nick just to kind of give us a little bit about what the bowl season is all about, and then just kind of get your take on just all these amazing games that are going on.
Chris, Phil, thanks for having me. You forgot about Syracuse. That was where I really got
sorry.
Alma mater too. So Syracuse, Notre Dame, Patriots, all equally great experiences. Yeah, thanks for giving me the shout out on the podcast. You mentioned some of the guests. We had Daryl Moose Johnston too. We had former Bears head coach Dave Wannstedt. He was a good guest. He had some good bowl stories for us.
Oh, don't get Chris fired up right now.
He was my coach at the Bears.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't know if we should go there or not. But next week we got Sean McDonough and Barry Alvarez. So tune in.
Nice.
Tune in next week.
Nice.
But thanks for having me on. Bowl season. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of really cool jobs and work for great people. This might be one of the best jobs in sports that I have right now. They hired me 2 years ago as the executive director of the Football Bowl Association, which was really just an internal trade association like any others. A bunch of like businesses. We had an annual meeting, and nobody knew what the FBA was. And when they hired me, they said, the time has come where instead of 42 individual businesses running their bowl games, which they do a great job of building their brand and their community, we need kind of like a March Madness of college football. And that's kind of what bowl season is. So they basically handed me the keys to a 100-year-old American sports tradition that people love and said, make something better of it. So, we went through a process. We didn't outsmart ourselves by coming up with the name bowl season. Time is equity, is value, right? So people know what that is. We came up with our logo, and we do a lot of work promoting the bowl system as a whole and using this new bowl season brand, this Halo brand, as a platform to tell all the great stories about how meaningful bowl games are to the people who participate in them, to the communities that host them. And as you pointed out, Chris, a bowl game doesn't have to factor into the national championship picture for it to be meaningful to the teams that play in them. We've already seen it. We've gotten through our first weekend of bowl games. We've had 9 of them. 5 of them have been upsets. Coastal Carolina won their first bowl game ever. UAB upset it's the highest ranked team they ever beat when they beat BYU yesterday. You see the celebrations on the field, and you said it, Chris. Most of these kids aren't playing in the NFL. For a lot of them, how long have they been playing football? Since they were 5, 10, most of their life.
Right.
Might be the last game they ever play in their life, and they're doing it with their best friends, with their teammates, at some destination that they may never go to in their life. It's memories that last a lifetime. And so those are the stories we're trying to tell with bowl season.
Well, and it's great because when you talk about kind of these experiences, I mean, this experience is from the walk-on to the star player. And I remember my freshman year, we played in the Cotton Bowl. That was Tim Brown's. That was the year Tim Brown won the Heisman. And because I was on our scout team, I went. So the whole team kind of went like a week early, and then I went like the last 3 or 4 days of the bowl, right? Because I was a scrub. And so, but it was a great experience, even for me. And I only spent a couple of days there. I had never been to Dallas, Texas before, and it was just kind of an amazing experience that I'll obviously never forget. And really was may have been some of the motivation that really kind of made me say, hey, next year I want to go for the full week, right? Not even like, hey, I want to be a starter or I want to play or whatever. The next bowl I go to, I want to go for the full week.
Right.
Yeah, you hear those stories. It could be the star player. It could be the walk-on. It could be a a kid, and there's a lot of them, Chris, that get recruited from maybe a lesser socioeconomic area of the country, and they get to go to Hawaii. They get to go to New York City and play in the Pinstripe Bowl over the holidays, or they get to go to Miami, places they've never been before and may never get to again. Rocket told a story on the podcast about being in the Orange Bowl and seeing Jerome Bettis on the jet ski doing a flip, and everybody held their breath. He talked about staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Key Biscayne. He said, Rocket's enthusiasm, Chris. He said, there was a show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous back then. That was it. The memories were so clear. It wasn't about any of the other stuff that you would think a superstar player would remember. It's those times and those, with his friends and his teammates.
Well, and I think that's so special because what happens, and I think what was great. So the Bulls I participated in, they included a camera in kind of in the gifts that the players received.
Yeah, before we had cameras on our phones, right?
Right, exactly.
Everybody's got a camera now.
Now they're probably getting, actual phones and PlayStations and everything else. But we had the little quick ones. But it was great because that allowed us to kind of capture these memories. And I still have those pictures, and I look back on them now, and I'm like, wow, and kind of what you said, Nick. It's not about like, hey, who scored a touchdown or the fact that we may have won or lost. It was, look at these experiences we were having, kind of like I saw my first alligator when I went down to the Orange Bowl, right? There was like an alligator trainer, and they had one of the guys come in, and it was insane, right? So these are these experiences, and they go from, being in, great, wonderful areas like Hawaii to even like, some places locally, just like in the South.
Yeah, well, the organizations, the communities that host these games are so proud of them, and they really want to show off what's best about their community. So you probably remember the routine, right? You had a day where you went to a children's hospital, or you did something really good in the community to really make your mark while you were there. You had an event that both teams were at, and maybe you had a dance off, or maybe a hypnotist or something, and you interacted with the other team, right? You always ate food unique to the area. If you were in New Orleans, you had all that great New Orleans Cajun food. If you went to the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, you had barbecue. It was always something unique to the area. And you're right. It could be a place like Miami where you go to the beach. It could be a place like New York City where it's New York over the holidays. It could be Birmingham where they take them to the Civil Rights Museum, and it's amazing how impactful that is to the student athletes. It's every bowl game's unique. They're all special. Ideally, if you're at school for 5 years, redshirt a year, but you still go to the bowl game these days. And by the way, Chris, they can't get away with taking a red shirt or a freshman for only 3 days. They're all going for the
Notre Dame, man.
You were too early. You
discount on Zorich.
But I mean, can you imagine going to 5 bowl games and you go to Miami, San Diego, New York City, you name 2 other unique locations. I mean, what an experience that is.
Nick, let me ask a question. Let me ask you, how did the changing of the names with the sponsorship, is that something that you're directly involved with as the bowl season, or is it just the ownership rights of that city goes to the highest bidder to put their name on the brand for advert? How does that work itself?
Yep. So each of the bowl games is in charge of running their own event, and that includes their corporate sponsors and their title sponsors. Obviously those titles have value. Some of the games that have been around a long time that have great brand names in and of themselves, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, you can rattle them all off. Their corporate sponsors tend to be the big national brands, right? Allstate, Capital One, Goodyear, etc. Some of the bowls that are really more community-based events, you see small, emerging corporations. Typically, and you may not know it, but typically they happen to be maybe based in that community, so they're supporting their local bowl game, but at the same time making a big splash nationally. Some of these bowl game names you see this month, you may have never heard of that company, but I bet you look it up. And they have a lot of ads during that week. So, I'm a big fan of having a core brand. Like I
Right.
one of my jobs after working at for the Patriots and the Big East was working for Under Armour, running college sports marketing. So I developed more of appreciation for that. So the games that have been around a while, they have their own brand in addition to the corporate partner, right? The Orange Bowl is always going to be the Orange Bowl, right? That's their brand, right? A company can pay to tack their name on and associate it with a great brand, right? Capital One's a great brand. Orange Bowl's a great brand. That's a great match, right? Some of the games that maybe are newer that just have a corporation name and it changes, personally, I think it's hard to develop your own brand identity over time. So it's a little different, but companies will pay a little bit more if you call the bowl that, their name only and nothing else.
Well, and that's kind of interesting because I want to talk about the Jimmy Kimmel. What is it? The Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl?
Yes.
Yeah. How did that go?
How did that happen?
Yeah. So this was the first year of the LA Bowl. The LA Rams actually own that game.
Okay.
In their stadium. So great opportunity for them to have another event in their beautiful new stadium that they don't have to, go acquire. It's their event. They own and operate it. Certainly they have enough money behind it. So whatever, in year one anyways, I don't know how long that deal is. They felt the promotional value of that was greater than a check at this point. So I don't believe Jimmy paid anything for that, but he was pulled in. Obviously the game was broadcast on ESPN. Jimmy's on ABC. So there was that tie-in. And Jimmy had a lot of fun with it. It certainly gave it some unique attention. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, absolutely. And I'm a huge Jimmy Kimmel fan. And he actually voted on the mascot, what the mascot would look like. He voted on kind of what the actual mascot would do. He actually had I think 2 days ago, he had both teams there. So it's really cool kind of having the chance to kind of really kind of experience that. And I remember way back like 500 years ago, I forgot what bowl it was, but we had a chance to be on the Jay Leno show. And so, he introduced each player of every team, and it was just kind of a fun experience. So, I mean, this is what kind of I'm talking about when you share these moments with your teammates. And I mean, these kids are never going to forget that they were on Jimmy Kimmel's show saying their name in like a little joke.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about experiences. I mean, how cool is that? I'd like to do that. And I could go on and on. Like, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl in Boise, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard guys say, you know what, I wasn't really excited to go to that game, but when I left, I thought about it the whole following week. I couldn't believe how much fun I had. For some of them, they went. What do you call it? Not jet skiing. That's on water, but
snowmobiling.
Snowmobiling. They went snowmobiling. They went sledding. They're like, I never realized how much fun that was.
Wow.
Right.
I mentioned
never saw snow probably in their life.
I mentioned New York a couple of times, but they take them to the 9/11 memorial. They take the captains to ring the opening bell of the stock exchange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every bowl has that kind of thing.
Well, and one of the things I want to talk to you about, Nick, was, okay, so my understanding is that, I mean, this is a complex situation, this whole bowl thing, because, I mean, who goes to what bowl outside of the ones that have the special selection, obviously the semis, things like that. But then what about like the ones that kind of, when you look at it, it trickles down. My understanding was about halfway through the season, there's a huge conference call with like a billion ADs. And they kind of go back and forth, and they're kind of talking about, is that what happens? I mean, how are these teams selected?
Chris, I love you, but that's not at all what happens.
Okay, please let me know, because all my information is wrong.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to bust your chops.
No, that's fine.
Most people don't. That's what's convoluted. I mean, one of the things with the bowl season brand is we kind of want to make it simpler for the fan, right? You're a part of bowl season, this big, part of something bigger, and then you kind of figure out what bowl you're going to. So, how big of an accomplishment getting that sixth win is, for these teams to get their sixth win, like that's winning winning your division, in a pro sport, right?
Sure.
You're going to the postseason, and then from there you see which level bowl game you go to. But so every bowl game has a contract with two conferences. So it's a you can imagine the negotiations going on before a cycle, right? Usually they're 4-year or 6-year contracts, and they're all kind of in sync, all lined up with the playoff when that starts and ends, that, those contracts. So the SEC has contracts with 10 bowl games, the ACC the same, so they kind of have their bowl lineup. Selection order for the most part is predetermined based on how much the bowl is willing to pay the conference, right? So it's a little bit of, how long has the bowl been around? What's the history and tradition of it? How valuable is that game? How much money do they make? How much money are they willing to pay the teams? So the SEC, for example, after all their CFP and the New Year's 6 games are slotted in, the Citrus Bowl gets the first selection. In Orlando, and then the Outback Bowl in Tampa gets the next selection, and then it goes down and down. So every conference has that.
Okay.
So personally, I'd like to see a little bit more flexibility. Maybe there's groups of conferences tied in with groups of bowls, because sometimes if a conference has a really good year top to bottom, they're matched up with a conference that happens to be a little down, the fourth team from one conference might not be a good matchup for the fourth team from the other, and maybe you can pull in a BYU or somebody like that had a really good year. But for the most part, the system works. It's not a lot of controversy because it's kind of determined by contracts, and people just follow the rules.
Okay.
There's a little bit of swapping at the end sometimes to make matchups a little bit more intriguing. But sometimes you don't know what's an intriguing matchup. I watched BYU get upset this weekend by UAB, and BYU was feeling like they should have been in the New Year's 6 games, and they surely didn't do anything to prove it that day. So, it's always something interesting in every bowl game.
Well, and then it's the $5,000 question for Notre Dame fans. I mean, do you feel that because of the kind of alignment that the bowls have with conferences, I mean, where does a Notre Dame team that may have only won, maybe 8 or 9 games, I mean, outside of going to New Year's 6 or have a chance to compete in CFP, I mean, what happens when they only win 8 or 9 games?
Yeah, so that was a problem for Notre Dame a little, not too far back. But once they partnered with the ACC and played basketball and all their other sports in the ACC, independent football, as you know, part of that arrangement is that they're a part of the ACC's bowl lineup. So those ACC contracts I mentioned, the 10 of them, if Notre Dame is not in the CFP or the New Year's 6, one of the ACC bowls can select Notre Dame when it's their turn to select. So Notre Dame is pretty well covered. You look at the ACC bowl lineup; those are the bowls in an 8-win season that Notre Dame could go to. That's how they ended up in the Pinstripe Bowl a few years ago.
Right. Okay. Well, and then along with that, Nick, and it's funny because I remember reading an article, and it was somebody that was covering the ACC, and they were saying that a lot of the coaches in the ACC were kind of pissed because that last team got like the one team that Notre Dame came in, the last team actually didn't have a chance to go to a bowl game.
Yeah, so I lived that as well. When I was the deputy commissioner at the Big East, you remember they were in the Big East and all this. Same arrangement as they have with the ACC. They played basketball in the Big East and soccer and everything else, and they were a part of our bowl lineup. So inevitably, I think after the BCS, the Gator Bowl had to pick, and if West Virginia felt like they should have gone to the Gator Bowl and Gator Bowl took Notre Dame instead, I got a lot of emails.
You did.
Yeah. But the trade-off is, Notre Dame scheduled a lot of our teams.
Sure.
We were a great member, of the basketball conference and all of that. And, the details of any agreement do not matter to a coach when it comes bowl selection time.
Right, exactly.
Coach Minter can probably echo that later on.
Right. Well, the coaches are like walking into the AD's office, like throwing papers out, like, this is bullcrap. This is crazy. This is not fair. How does that happen? So I can totally understand that. One of the things I wanted to ask, and I've been kind of following kind of the whole kind of what's going on in the semis. Well, for the semis, obviously watching all the college games this year, are there some bowls that folks might not have known, maybe known the opponents, but kind of like watching UAB in the Independence Bowl against BYU, a lot of people thought that was going to be a landslide, right? Because I mean, BYU's ranked 13, and then all of a sudden, UAB wins. So, are there any games that kind of people maybe should watch out for?
Oh God, I think any of them. I mean, it's always a matter of motivation. It's a matter of unknowns. A school like UAB, if people thought they weren't very good, it's probably just because they never saw them play.
Right. Exactly.
There's quite a few pretty good football players in Alabama, and they can't all go to Auburn and Alabama.
Right.
But I think in general, what's one of the more intriguing things about bowl season every year is the matchups, right? You see teams from a lot of times from different parts of the country who would never schedule each other. So you see NC State going out to play in the Holiday Bowl against UCLA. They would never play. That's interesting to me. You see Miami going to the Sun Bowl to play Washington State. Sometimes they don't have to be geographically far apart to be an unusual matchup. In Charlotte, in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, you've seen North Carolina play South Carolina. I mean, they're bordering states, but they're rivals off the field. They're afraid to schedule each other. Right? People wants to lose that. And to that point, I'm going next week to the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, where Florida obviously had a down years playing Central Florida.
Yep.
Florida would never schedule Central Florida in a million years.
Right.
Central Florida's, can't wait to beat them. And that game is sold out. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
Do you ever see this setting up to be, like you said, March Madness, where this bowl champion or CFP now allows more teams in, because like UAB, for a perfect example, any given day, any team can win this great game. So do you see an opportunity where they would lengthen the amount of teams playing in this championship series?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. I look at college football's postseason as a whole. I look at the college football playoff and I look at bowl season, and together they make the entire postseason. And you need them both. The playoff. It's important to crown a national champion. Fans want to see that. I want to see it.
Right.
How big can that be? I mean, we're in a day and age where student athletes have more of a voice than they ever had before. A little too much for my liking. I'm a little old school. I did what I was told. You know what I mean? And I became better for it. Right. I didn't know what I was doing when I was 21. I thought I did.
Right.
Thank God I wasn't allowed to do what I wanted to do. But to that point, if they go to 8 teams, that's 3 games somebody has to play and win to win the national championship. If they go to 12 or 16, some or all of them would have to play 4 games. Do you really think these guys who are looking to the NFL are going to play 4 more games? You might see guys opting out of playoff teams, right? So I don't believe the playoff can ever get that big, right? It's proposed 12, maybe 16 someday. I can't imagine any bigger than that. There's more than 16 teams every year that deserve a postseason experience. That's why I said earlier, it's okay that not every bowl game factors into the national championship. Sure. It's okay. It's meaningful to that program, given who they are, where they are in their development. Are they a new program that's trying to develop? Maybe it's a name brand program that had their day, but they're a little bit down. You think of the Tennessees of the world, and you name them. It doesn't have to be from smaller conferences. What would Kentucky do if all there was the playoff and no bowl games? What would they play for? No offense against. That's a great
point. It's a great point. Same with Wake Forest. They had a great year.
Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, Northwest. I mean, you go on and on. Cincinnati caught lightning in a bottle this year, and they're a great team. But for the previous 100 years they played football, maybe a 12-team, 14 playoff certainly would not have served them very well.
Right. Well, and I know we have some other guests we're going to get to. So, Nick, we're obviously very thankful for you coming on. But one of the questions we kind of alluded to a little bit that I wanted to ask, and is it fair for kind of both the bowls and the individual student athlete? But then you have student athletes who unfortunately are opting out of the bowl games. Yes. Now, as a student athlete, I kind of understand what they're doing, but in a sense, as an administrator, I mean, I was an athletic director, and it's tough because you're trying to sell a program and you want to put your best foot forward, then all of a sudden, a couple of your star players aren't playing.
Yeah, I can understand both sides of that argument. Personally, for someone who oversees bowl season, I don't put much thought into it, Chris and Phil. 99% of the players opt in. So those are the ones I'm worried about.
Right.
It's if a couple feel that they're better served doing something else, good luck to them.
Mm-hmm.
My gut is they'll regret it down the road. I don't think there's too many people 20 years later say, God, darn, I wish I didn't play in that bowl game. That was no fun. You know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure some of these kids will go, I would do anything. I bet you do it, Chris, all the time. I'd do anything to play one game with my friends.
Oh, exactly.
Without a
So
doubt.
I feel bad for them. I think they got a lot of people in their ears. And go back to what I said earlier, when you're 22 years old, you don't make good decisions. I think the adults in these kids' lives need to step up a little bit and say, no, this is what you're doing and this is why. And, stop being ridiculous.
Well,
it was a nicer word than I was going to say.
Oh, that's okay. I have to stop Phil from saying that all the time.
Don't worry.
Nick, thank you very much.
I grew up in the same area, and we both had the there was no filter in our households, Phil, right?
None whatsoever. I always try to tell people, although my dad and I do a show on our network, the Tape Never Lies Network, breaking down the tape, and I've gotten him to use a couple of little fiery words when it comes to watching some Chicago Bears game tape. But I know he's excited about the Bowls.
I got to show you this before I forget. It took me all night yesterday to look this up. So this.
Oh my God! What the? Wait,
I'm the guy in the blue jacket.
No way.
That was in your locker room after you beat Miami in a 1990 season. 1990.
Oh wow!
Holy crap!
It's the fact that Chris is wearing what is the
suspenders? I was styling, man.
What is he out of a mob movie there?
Nick, oh my gosh!
I can't believe you know that. I've aged quite a bit, but you look
right. I actually got wider. I maybe didn't age, but I got wider. Folks, I want to let everybody know that I have forced Nick to be on my weekly podcast, so we're actually going to hear a lot more from Nick, and he really has an exciting journey that I really want to share with the listeners. So, although we're going to say goodbye to Nick now, in maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, we're going to have a chance to kind of learn about kind of Nick's journey and really what he's done, not only as an administrator, but really has a chance to kind of change what folks think about college football, is his involvement with Under Armour, obviously with the bowl season. So, Nick, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you. And I'm really excited about that picture because I actually did have hair back then, so it was kind of cool.
I just thought I'd share that. Guys, thanks for having me on. I never get tired of talking about bowl season, especially with guys like you. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate
that
it.
That is a small world. That's crazy.
I got to get Nick to come on our show, too.
Nice.
In the off season.
Guys, anytime. Yeah, I get asked for a lot of things just like you guys do. I'm a little picky, but, but I put it this way. Somebody said this to me once. I do a lot of things for people that I don't like. If I'm asked to do something for somebody I do like, it's not easy.
I love that. Is a knockout statement. That's a mic drop statement right there. Honestly, Nick, I can't wait to tell my dad. I'm sure he's like, oh my God, I know his dad and everything. It's such a small world. Coach DeLeon and Coach DeLeon's coming on our show in a couple weeks to break down the offensive line issues with the Bears. He's unbelievable.
Any aspiring young coach needs to watch that one.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the mad scientist when it comes to that.
Yes. So I'm excited about you coming on here, breaking down bowls with Chris Zorich on the Super 16. It's the bowl show now.
There you go. But I also want to encourage folks to check out.
Yeah, you got to check out his podcast.
No, seriously, because it's exciting. I mean, obviously have a chance to kind of hear Rocky's story, but also hear others. I mean, it's really interesting because everybody has a totally different experience. So that comes out once a week, you said?
Yep, comes out every Thursday morning. So look for it. Obviously, you can watch all the past episodes. I think we're doing episode 17 this coming week. And as I said, it's Sean McDonough and Coach Barry Alvarez. So it should be a good show.
Are you on iTunes? Are you on iTunes, or is it a show?
Anywhere you watch. Yeah, if you want to watch the video, you watch it on YouTube, our bowl season YouTube channel.
Okay, check it out, guys. If you're listening on the podcast version of this, Nick Carparelli, God, my paisan over here, Nick Carparelli, check out his podcast on YouTube, on iTunes, wherever.
Called Bowl Season Stories, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, you name it.
And it's really phenomenal because you get a chance to kind of hear a lot of kind of older guys kind of talk about their experiences and how much fun they had. And you can really hear it in their voices because now we're all kind of older. And, as you mentioned before, Nick, we kind of wish we had that one last game to kind of play, but having a chance to kind of relive their bowl experience is really amazing.
And they have some great on the field stories too. We focused a lot, but there is a game, and a lot of them are really memorable games and memorable plays that these guys have. So check it out. I think you'll enjoy it.
That's absolutely wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Carpelli, thank you so much for being on the Super 16 Bowl Show.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so
Take
much.
care.
Bye now, Nick. The great Nick Carparelli from Connecticut.
Connecticut. I didn't even know that.
Ask him about Moderna pizza.
I forgot about that. That's right.
Doubled and tripled
That's
down.
right.
Maybe Frank Sally's. I could see Sally.
He's laughing.
Yeah. So we'll have Nick on to talk pizza with him. When Zorich comes out, Walter Camp.
There you go.
We'll get over to Moderna Pizza or Sally's. Maybe we'll try Sally, but Modern to me is number one. But we can have a debate about that.
So I'm actually going to bring on Bertrand Berry first, but also it's kind of interesting because our last guest, who was a coach at Cincinnati for 10 years, and I want to bring him on because I want to kind of talk about kind of what that process is for a coach prepare his team,
for the bowl.
But also actually Bertrand actually was at Notre Dame the same time his defensive coordinator,
Bertrand Berry.
Rick Minter was there. So we're going to have a chance to kind of talk about that as well. But first I want to bring on Bertrand, who currently has a podcast.
There he is.
It's the Train and Gross podcast. Am I right?
All right.
That's right. That's right.
He is a 12-year NFL veteran, Notre Dame alum, Fiesta Bowl participant, which we're going to talk about. And it's, really exciting because I kind of want to get your take on kind of what that bowl experience was for you, if you can remember back that far.
I can definitely go back that far. It was a great experience for me being able to get down to that game. We were playing Colorado, a team that was, I think, number 3 in the country. They had the Heisman Trophy winner, Rashawn Salam, that year, God rest his soul, and they were loaded. And we had a little bit of a tough year, so us getting to the Fiesta Bowl was a little tough in people's eyes because a lot of people didn't think we were deserving.
Okay.
And I know for us as a team, we really felt like it was an opportunity to really showcase ourselves against a quality opponent. And we had some tough games that year, and we felt like this was an opportunity to kind of rewrite the ending and give ourselves a chance to get some momentum going into the 95 season. So it didn't quite go as planned, but man, we had a great time in Phoenix, and we stayed at the Butte Hotel. Yeah. So, and it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. And who knew all these years later, I'd be right here in the same city as a washed up football player, just kind of living life now.
But I think it's exciting because you've had a chance to experience the Fiesta Bowl.
Yes.
And really talk a little bit, even though it may have been a couple years ago, I mean, a lot of things they do are still kind of the same. As Nick mentioned before, there's a dinner where both teams get together. I mean, do you remember any of those experiences? Can you share with our audience those experiences?
Oh, of course. I remember getting together. Cordell Stewart was the quarterback, and I remember being on stage, and I remember Charles Barkley was one of the guest speakers.
Wow.
He came in to the dinner where we both were
Right.
together, and if I'm not mistaken, it was Coach McCartney's last game.
Okay.
And they wanted to send him out the right way, obviously, and they were disappointed because they had just lost to Nebraska in that big rivalry in the Big 8. You know, before it was the Big 12, Big 8. You know, so we're dating ourselves right here. But I just remember looking at their team and man, they were an impressive group. They had a lot of great athletes. They had, I believe, of all of the major awards, I think they had like 3 or 4 of them.
Wow.
As far as individual winners,
Right.
I think they had the Bolitnikoff winner and the Jim Thorpe winner, and I forget all of them, but they came in with a lot of credentials, and unfortunately the game played itself out in that way. They showed why they were the number 3 team in the country, and with the motivation of sending their coach out and us having a down year, it was just a tough situation for us to overcome. But man, the off the field was a great experience. I enjoyed my time. The only thing that I wish I would have done differently, and I think I can speak for the rest of my teammates, is, you know how when you go to a bowl game and you get a certain allotment of gifts from the bowl game?
Sure.
Well, the year after that, we decided that we would take the money as opposed to the gifts, and we would put it into getting a ring.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because the gear itself was a little challenging, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
they skimped a little bit on the swag.
Well, you're being very kind.
It just didn't look. It just
kind.
didn't look good. You know what I mean? It wasn't
Right.
something that you were gonna wear out. You know, all the different colors and the big logos on the on the chest.
Yes, I remember that.
Fiesta, wasn't it like brown and
Well,
it was orange and yellow.
Yeah.
that's it.
Oh, it's crazy.
Who was the
So,
sponsor of that? Fiesta? Was it
Oh, God,
Tostitos? The
Well,
I don't
Tostitos?
even
Back
remember.
when we did, I think it was it the Fed? No, I don't even think it was FedEx.
I think it was Tostitos. It may have been Tostitos. It may have been.
Yeah, because it had a weird color.
That orange and brown and yellow.
Do you still have it somewhere?
No.
No.
See, the thing was, I always gave all that stuff away.
Right.
And so I
okay.
talked to the upperclassmen. I was like, look, why don't we just get something that we remember? Like, yeah, the gear is cool, but I'd rather get the money and put it into something that we'd all have forever, that we could all share in common.
School would do this. Like Notre Dame would say, let's give them a ring, get in a bowl.
Actually, because there's an allotment. I think it's like $320, or at least.
I was right. Look at
back then. It was back then.
Justine
I don't
King.
know what it is now.
All right, thank you,
Justine's
Justine.
jumping in.
But it's kind of interesting because they wound up getting like every gift possible for like the $320, right? And so I remember, and I think this is going to be a great segue to bring Coach Minner on in a minute, because I know Lou had some say over like what we got, but at the end of the day, it was kind of like I still have it, but it was like this cheap kind of watch that like I think kind of lost time. It wasn't like I don't even think it was a Timex, but what they were trying to do though was get like enough gifts as possible for like $320. And I'm like, you know, can't you work out like a deal with like, but I don't know if the NCAA allowed that. You know, it was like, can't you work out a deal with like getting like the best price for like a nice watch?
So the deal was, Chris, if you remember, we got so much money from the bowl, and then we got so much from the school.
Right.
So the watch was always part of the school.
Okay.
They always gave us the watch, and
Okay.
the bowl games gave us, you know, $300 worth of whatever they deemed,
Right. Okay.
you know, fitting for us
Chips
to have.
and salsa and a sweatsuit.
I mean, but it was the like the rain breakers, like, you know, the windbreaker type jumpsuit. You know, I mean, you know, every time you made a move, it made noise, so you weren't sneaking up on anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Turbo and ozone was perfect for them, but it wasn't. Bertrand.
All we needed was the broom. We just needed the broom. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. That is hilarious. Yes. That is hilarious, man.
Bertrand Berry, former Notre Damer. Now listen to this, Chris, as I'm doing in 97, drafted in the 3rd round, pick number 86 by the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts took him. Then you went up to Canada and played for the Eskimos.
Had a cup of coffee.
a cup of coffee, and then came back to the Broncos, and then finished up having a tremendous career with the Arizona Cardinals, who are playing. They lost today, Chris, to the Lions, for God's sake. Lions, 1-win Lions pull a huge upset in the NFL. Bertrand. I always wanted Bertrand to be a Bear, but that never.
I got a story about that.
Go ahead.
Wait,
tell me real quick.
So I am a free agent in 2003.
Yes.
And I am talking to a few teams, organizations. I'm talking to the Cowboys, I'm talking to the Cardinals. And the day before I signed with Arizona, I get a call from Lovie Smith. And he's like, man, I know we're late to the party, but we would definitely love to talk to you and gauge your interest and all these other things. And I'm not even going to lie, like the way that he came at me, it felt so off. I felt so put off about it. I mean, sure. I basically curved him. I basically curved him. And it wasn't meant to be towards Lovie, because I had a tremendous amount of respect for him, being as that I remember him in my division with the Rams, how that defense played for them. And
right.
I knew what he could do with pass rushers and guys that could get after quarterbacks. So it was the one chance I got to be recruited again.
Yes.
And the fact that they were so late to the party, I just
left a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it left a real sour taste in my mouth. So, I always wanted to apologize to Coach Smith for that, because, I didn't handle that the right way. But, they actually were a team that was going to give me a tryout when I first left Edmonton.
Okay.
But the Eskimos actually retained my rights because I left. And so I'm in Chicago.
Oh, this is the story I heard. This is the story I heard.
I'm in Chicago. I'm at the hotel. I'm leaving the hotel. I forget my bag. I walk back into the hotel room. The phone rings. It's the general manager, and he's like, "We can't work you out." And I'm, what? He's like, "Yeah, apparently you still belong to a team in Canada." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So they blocked my rights. They never released my rights. And so my agent had to get back on the phone and talk to Edmonton. And because I went to the GM and I spoke with them face to face, I told them what my desires were. I didn't want to play up there. It just didn't fit me. Right. And everything seemed cool. So when I left Edmonton, I thought everything was, was perfect and I could go on with my career. But they never released my rights, and then we had to make a deal with the Edmonton Eskimos saying that the only way that they would release me is if I ever decided to come back to Canada, I'd have to play for them.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
So I couldn't work out. I mean, literally, had I not forgotten my bag, I would have had the egg on my face driving over to the facility and being told I couldn't.
No, sorry, you can't do
Jerry Angelo would have been like,
Angelo, there you go. There you go.
What are we doing?
Wow!
I can't work them out.
It was crazy,
up, man. It's crazy.
I remember, because I still had a chance to get that credited season. And Chris, about those credited seasons, brother. You got those are gold.
Right.
So this is like week 12. So I still had enough enough games to get that credit. Those 4 games in to get that credited season. And man, when he called me and told me he can't work me out, man, I was crushed because I'd already missed that whole season, and that was really, in my mind, the last opportunity I thought that I was going to have to get back in the league.
Wow.
Well, and then unfortunately, fortunately, you have a chance to kind of see what happens. And although I think in 2006 they went to the Super Bowl, they wound up losing it, but you had a chance to kind of establish yourself at a different place, and so
made the Pro Bowl in 2004, coming back motivated.
Love it. All right, so I want to bring in Coach Minner because I want to bring
in the coach, man.
A coach.
I hadn't seen Coach in years.
Coach been patient back there.
I'd love to hear Coach's perspective on kind of like what first of all, I'm sorry. This is a coach that I don't even know how long you've been coaching, but you've been at South Carolina, Kentucky, Notre Dame twice.
Yep.
And you were the coach for 10 years at Cincinnati. And at one point, you brought them from FCS or 1A to.
No, it was always a 1A program.
Okay.
We took them from being a major independent into the
that's what it was.
Alliance, 94, 95. And then in 96 was the inaugural season of Conference USA. Now, it's shifted many hats now, obviously, and souls around the country. But no, I got the job there in 94 after spending 2 great years at Notre Dame with Lou in 92, 93, and Bert was there. And I tell you what people need to know and understand is Notre Dame in those days, Chris, it was part of your team, and then kind of that next 8 or 9 years, that's Alabama of today. I mean, people forget that. I mean, these dudes got #1 draft picks. Every player on Bert's defense got drafted. I mean, that's what Alabama's playing with and Georgia's playing with today. That was Notre Dame. And I think with Marcus Freeman, they'll have a chance to crack some of that. And it's been good. There's nothing wrong with what's been going lately, but they're going to take it to another level with Marcus up there, I think. But
Nice.
There's a couple of things I want to unpack with you, Coach.
Yeah. Before we go on, let me show you this right here. What is this?
That's a Fiesta Bowl logo.
There it is.
Wow.
There it is.
Wow.
The sun.
Program of a
That
Fiesta
sun.
Bowl, and that date is December the 25th. It used to be played on Christmas Day when it first got started.
Okay.
Wow.
1978.
78.
No way.
Set them straight in 78, I tell you.
Let me one last thing. You guys can appreciate that. Who is that guy?
There's
Oh my God.
Ah.
Wow.
That's good old coach. That's coach. That's coach.
About 40
looking
years
like a
old,
young Bill Gates.
Right.
We went out there. I want to say it was like 7th or 8th annual, and we went out there and played UCLA. Terry Donahue, rest his soul, and we tied 10-10, and that's why I could never stand the not breaking the tie back in those days. I mean, 10-10. I mean, all of a sudden you do all that work and you go home. What'd you do?
Right.
Well, we
That's
tied.
crazy. That's crazy. Well, Ricky, you've had such a amazing kind of career, but and I'm going to talk about Coach Freeman. I want to talk about your experience at Cincinnati. But first, I want to talk to you about as a head coach.
Right.
Kind of what's the process when all of a sudden all these bowls are out there? You have more than 6 wins, or you're a winning program. I mean, are you getting phone calls, or are you saying, well, hey, I'd love to go south? Or I mean, what was that process like for you?
It was a unique situation, Chris. I was a assistant at Notre Dame, so it was all done for us. We played in BCS-like games. 92, 93, we're in the Cotton Bowl back-to-back years. I leave to go to Cincinnati. I'm going to a school that was a have-not, and they had not been to a bowl game in 50 years almost. So we got the program off and started. 94 was rough. 95, 6, 7 had 3 straight winning seasons.
Okay.
And we got up there at 7-4 in 97. And back then there weren't near as many bowls, probably 30, 35 rather than 42.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one bowl sitting out there that was started for the very first time, the inaugural. I listened while they were talking earlier, but the Humanitarian Bowl, which is now the Potato Bowl, whatever they call it. It was in Boise, Idaho. And it was sitting out there, and it was the inaugural. And we had an aggressive athletic director, and he bargained, and he bought, and he bartered. And we came out the winner of probably about 5 schools that were trying to get that last spot.
Wow.
And we ended up gaining that spot. Not till about December the 1st was that selected. And so here we are now celebrating because we're playing for the first time in 48 years as a university. So what I did was probably teach Cincinnati how to become a major player or envision themselves on being big time and all that sort of thing. Of course, what they've done today is unreal. But once you get the bowl, no matter how you get it, once you get the bowl, you tell your team about it. And then it's how do you go about preparing your team for a bowl? And I'm going to tell you this, and both of you can vouch for this. I think the master of bowl preparations was Lou Holtz. I mean, I really do. And he would always tell us as coaches, probably as players also, and I did the same thing at Cincinnati. Wasn't always successful, but our approach was good. Barry's approach at Wisconsin was mirrored to this, and his bowl record is outstanding. But he always said a bowl game is like a one-game season. a lot of coaches, when I was there with Charlie at Notre Dame the second time around, we went to 2 bowls. He always viewed the bowl games like a playoff game, and you had a little break. And there's a big difference if your mindset says, well, you're going to a playoff game versus you're going to a 1-game season. Okay, so you remember we're playing January 1 bowl games back then, and we get done at SC, Thanksgiving weekend. So we got 5 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe give the guys off a week to get freshed up. And then we said, well, remember, we're going to do the off-season program. So you used to hit the mats a little bit, a day or 2 a week, just to
fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals.
We're
You
told.
get your quickness back. The first weekend centered around recruiting was a Friday, Saturday practice. And the first weekend was spring ball. You say, well, we got to go through winter program, get our kids back a little bit.
Wow.
We got to go through spring practice, and we're going to get back to fundamentals. Also, if you recall, when you became a senior, graduating senior, getting ready to play in your last bowl game, he always gave the seniors that weekend off, or at least the Friday practice off. And he did that as a reward. And more than anything, we didn't understand it, but he did it for us as coaches to see what the hell we're going to have coming back next year when all you dudes are gone. And I mean, that second year when I was there, 92, 93, when I was there, Bert, you remember this. Lou and I didn't talk a whole lot. We're standing on the same side of the ball. And all these guys, I'm talking about Bryant Young, Jimmy Flanagan, Jeff Burris, the bus, all these guys, they're not out there. And some other dudes got to step up now. And that was that lull in talent, to be honest with you, a little bit between Vinny's last recruiting couple of years. Remember him, right? Vinny Serrata.
Absolutely.
The real guy at Notre Dame. He's the one that put Notre Dame together. And Lou just, got it done, helped close on it. But when that class in 91 left that he recruited, it went 91, 92, 93. When that 93 class left, there was a void in the roster, and it took it a couple of years to get back. That's why the 94 team, Bert, was a tough year for you guys. Bob Davey came in, replaced me, and all that sort of thing. But that 93 team, the team that beat Florida State, got beat by the field goal with Boston College, was a great football team. We still to this day should have been split national titles with Florida State and us. But we go to the Cotton Bowl second time in a row, beat A&M second time in a row. But the way Lou approached the game was unbelievable. It was, we're going to do winter program, we're going to do spring practice in that weekend. The next weekend of practice, we're going to do fall camp. It's kind of fundamentals. We're still not installing the game plan yet. We're just trying to get better, go against each other, a lot of inside runs. And then you start doing, 2-week install. So you start doing a week of install and you get that done. And then you have that final scrimmage, right, on campus before you break. You get about a 4 or 5 day break, go home. Then you guys are going to rendezvous in Dallas or Fiesta or wherever. Notre Dame could afford to do that with the payouts of the bowl games and everything. And when we showed up in Dallas, then we were in a game week mentality. And when we went down there, this is Lou, but when we went down there was no taking the pads off and going light for 4 days in a row.
Yeah, I remember that.
We're doing our typical Tuesday, Wednesday. We're doing some live hitting, but Lou Holtz's team, and both of you played in Lou Holtz prepared teams. You can never say they were not physically prepared for a bowl game. This day and age, you say, what happens to a team that gets 5 weeks off, 4 weeks off? They quit tackling. They're sloppy. They're out of condition.
Sure.
It's lots of ways of getting there. I'm not criticizing on how you do it, but I was always proud to say that a Notre Dame team or a Rick Minter prepared team, a Barry Evilwest prepared team was tough, hard-nosed, physical. Look at Urban Meyer. And I know Urban's been in the news lately and all that stuff, but he was a great bowl guy in college because he's a Lou Holtz guy. They worked their tails off in all those preparations for national title games or playoff game, whatever they ran. But you never said, oh, Florida's defense or Ohio State's defense can't tackle. They got to get up to game speed. Those kind of teams came in there humming, ready to go. And I still think Lou is one of the very best guys to have a blueprint for how you prepare a football team to literally play in a bowl game. It depends on the time. If you have 5 weeks, that's different. I remember probably my last bowl game at Cincinnati was 2002. And we had gone out to Hawaii. We had played Ohio State. Our season got pushed back. We played a December 6th ball game in Greenville, North Carolina last Friday night TV telecast to win the title of our league, Conference USA.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we beat East Carolina and won the championship as a co-title with Gary Patterson down at TCU, but they
Okay.
were 10-1 co-champs, and we were like 7-6 co-champs.
Okay.
Took them to the Liberty Bowl, which would be the more prestigious to our league, Conference USA. That was our home spot. And we ended up running down to the New Orleans Bowl, which was played just last night. And
Okay.
but the problem was we only had like a week to prepare. It was like
Oh, wow.
it was on like the 16th or 17th. It was like a 10-day break. And I had exams to work in,
Ugh.
give your guys a break. You got to get your exams. And I ran up to Cincinnati 2 or 3 times this year to watch them play and connect with my old guys and everything. I remember that we practiced 4 times for that bowl game, 2 on campus and 2
That's
in the
all
park.
4?
We had 4 practices for the bowl game. And I tell you what, we played that way. Particularly when we took our dudes down to New Orleans. And maybe they participated a few, in a few night curfews or something, but we just got our butt ran over by North Texas, who was a more strong, more physical. But it was all about preparation. We just didn't have the time and go through our ritual of a Lou Holtz style preparation. It was all due to time, not know-how. It was just time.
Sure. Bert, can you remember? I mean, can you think of only having 4 practices before a bowl game? That's crazy.
No, we had 4 practices
A week.
down at the bowl site. So we got after it. We had 4 at the bowl site. So there was no taking a pass. I distinctly remember being in Dallas and family wanting to come and visit and all that kind of stuff. Because as y'all know, Coach Minter is a fellow Texan like me. That helped. And I tried to get with him, but my schedule, I was exhausted. Like I didn't have the energy to go and hang out because our practices were pretty intense. So I remember not taking the time off or not having those fluff practices where it's just shirts and no, we didn't have any of that. We had pads on. We were getting after it because we had bigger aspirations. We were fighting for a national championship.
Right.
The other thing, Chris, from a coach's standpoint, now the players have one view of a trip, like Bert just said, and the coaches have another. Lou would always tell us directly, "Hey, dudes, we're going on a business trip. We're not going to a bowl game. We're going on a business trip." And you try to have the players practice and then entertain and do their, you had like 3 or 4 major events that week. I remember the Lowry Beef Bowl.
Yep.
We went out to a steakhouse. I remember down in Dallas, you all met up that opening night. I think it was some kind of like a fan fest, and it was over there in the corner. It was, you're in Texas, number one, Bert, that, but those kind of like those strongman contest things, where you punch that thing and you can
like a carnival,
very carnival. But now you're going to see who's got the biggest, what, because you're going to pound these things, and all your girlfriends are hanging out. But it was fun. It was a great experience. But as coaches, we had to really balance between going back at night, doing some film work, getting our scripts ready for the next day and all that sort of thing. And still tried to manage your families who were there and tried to entertain them. And they're great experiences. I mean, everything that you guys have talked already about the bowls are wonderful. And I'm glad that you had on there, who was it, Chris, on there that talked about it as I'm sorry?
Nick Carpenter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nick. As a bowl season, I've always advocated that. I said NCAA basketball has got the right answers. They spread everything out. They put it on different networks. They make sure your team never gets missed.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest, college football wouldn't run that way.
Right.
You step on each other's toes, put about 6 games on one day, and all you're doing is killing the fans and the viewing audience. So now that thing has got a little method to their madness, and it's all laid out, and this team. I sit here yesterday and watched 3 bowl games because you can watch them all with some coordination. And so I think, Nick and his crew have done an outstanding job of kind of coordinating this. And then, of course, the bigger bowls, are going to gain more attention. And I don't necessarily like it that players are opting out of these bowl games today, but that's something they have to live with. Mm-hmm. I do think, Chris, you're right when you said that someday they'll regret that. 20 years, it may take a while, but someday they'll look back and say, man, I wish I'd have played the quarterback from Pitt, right? That guy was on the Heisman stage last week, and now he says, and they won the first ever ACC championship for Pitt. and he's not going to play. And
That's
again, that's his personal choice, but I'm
right.
certainly not for it.
Well, Coach Minna, as a head coach, so kind of going into you've accepted a bowl bid. So, I mean, how do you manage the assistant coaches and their families, your family coming down? I mean, is it one of those things where like, okay, so from this time to this time, we're practicing, we got meetings, you have maybe 2 hours in the evenings, maybe 3 hours to hang out with your family, and then it's back to the team. I mean, what was that experience like?
Well, you just had to map it out, just like you'd map out a normal fall camp schedule. Now you got a bowl camp schedule, but now you
Okay.
got more people involved. You know, you're integrating more people, you're integrating families. And there was there's different types of bowl games, just like you mentioned, Chris, earlier, that maybe your families don't come out there until the 3 day, those flights, you know, 3 days for the bowl game. It's a more condensed time. Now the hay's in the barn, the work's been done primarily. You're
Okay.
toward the end of the work week. But you always want to make sure that the children of coaches have a good time, particularly if it's in the holiday season area. I remember I took a Marshall football team to a bowl game day after Christmas. So we're at bowl site on Christmas. And, you know, I said I went to the nth degree, even though I was the interim coach, but I made sure that we're going to take care of all the kids. I said, get the names of all the children, of all the support staff that's going, and make sure you go down to Toys R Us or whatever, but we're getting a gift for every kid, and we're going to pay a Santa Claus to come in there and make that a special thing. We did the same thing at the bowl game we went to at the Humanitarian Bowl because that was the first ever for Cincinnati, but it was over Christmas. We were out there. So you got to be sensitive to holidays, make it fun for the kids. Don't smother them, give them some independence, let them have some time. I was the type that, you know, early in the week, you know, you didn't want to make a big curfew, and then you taper it down through the week. And just like you would at home, you know, that Thursday night rest is important. The Friday night rest of a game is real important. And of course, you got game day. So you would kind of try to temper the players a little bit about the same way. But it was just budgeting time and making, and you know, wives and significants are independent contractors anyway. I mean, they don't depend on husbands. I mean,
Right.
children,
Right.
on everything. So when they get to the bowl site, that's nothing new. That's what they've been doing all year long. You know, while the guy's off working his tail off, they've been managing their household and
Right.
kids. So you want to make sure those wives feel rewarded and the families feel rewarded, as well as the players themselves. You know, nowadays they can do so many more things. You know, they can fly the parents to the bowl games now where they used to not be able to. The money involved is so much better for both players and the coaches. And I love college football. I love everything about the bowl season. There's some new issues we got to talk about down the road, maybe at another time, whether it be the NIL, whether it be the portal. That's changed everything about college football the last 6 months. But I was just lucky to get through this bowl season and see some great college football games. And it's special to my heart, of course, that Cincinnati's in the college football playoffs because of the evolution of the program. And it had to be a perfect storm. You know, Ohio State had to be out of the way. Clemson had to be out of the way. Oklahoma had to be out of the way. And then 2 inches difference between Oklahoma State putting that ball in the pylon and not putting it in the pylon. I mean, all of that played in the Bearcats' favor. Not that they didn't deserve it, but of all years, because Cincinnati right now is nothing more than what Central Florida was 5 years ago.
Okay.
They were knocking on the door. The difference was in Cincinnati's schedule, the luck of the schedule gods, they put Indiana on their schedule this year, and they put Notre Dame on that schedule. Okay. And they won both of those games fair and square. And that's what gave them the fuel. And I do think of all the teams, Cincinnati got more credit. Usually you just say, what have you done now? I think Cincinnati got credit last year in that Peach Bowl for playing Georgia. Right. Kind of showed everybody they belong. So they came in this year already up there in the top 10 and never fell out of it. So they never had a big mountain to climb. They just had to have the pieces fall into place for them as they did down toward the end, because they teetered with losing a couple of games there toward the end. Tulsa almost had them on the ropes.
Right.
But it all fell out, you know, fair and square for them. And then, of course, Alabama, if Alabama would have lost, which everybody thought they were going to lose to Georgia, the number one defense in the country, Cincinnati would have been in. Right. But now that they won, it was because Oklahoma State lost that you didn't have an argument. It
Sure.
really
Right.
wasn't an argument because the team at 5 was Notre Dame, and they didn't have an argument over Cincinnati because.
Right.
I'll tell you what's a funny story. Whenever, and I know Brian Kelly real well. Brian's the one that when I got fired in 04 or 03 at Cincinnati, and then took off for went back to work for Lou, by the way, at South Carolina.
Right.
Back to Notre Dame for 2, and then came back to Cincinnati, kind of set out for 1. That's when Brian got the Cincinnati job. And he
Okay.
did a good job of getting me back involved in UC football, just to be around and show my
Wow.
face and all this
Okay.
kind of stuff. He hired my son as a GA. And so I was back in the saddle a little bit, just kind of out and about. And Brian and I have since have stayed good friends. He always talked to me he showed me respect by every time he'd get a job come by his way, he'd give me a phone call and say, well, what do you think about this? I said, no,
Wow.
you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. He called me on the Sunday night, December the 8th or 9th, when I was in Huntington, West Virginia, working for Marshall, when he got that job offered to him, or was going to get the job offered to him at Notre Dame. And
Wow.
he calls me up, says, hey, Rick, I think I can get this Notre Dame job. What do you think?
Hmm.
What do you think? You got to go. This is the one you got to go for. And
Right.
I said, Brian, listen, you just coached Cincinnati to 12-0, and they were 12-0 in 09.
Mhm.
Went to the Sugar Bowl, played Florida.
Mhm.
But I said, you're 12-0 at Cincinnati, and you're not playing for the national title. There's something wrong with that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You go to Notre Dame and go 11-1 or 10 or 12-0, and you'll probably play for the national title. I said, you're leaving a regional school, going to the school. The most worldwide, nationwide brand there is in football is Notre Dame. And the other factor that I thought was so critical, he's a great coach, right? He's won 260 games. Brian Kelly is more like Lou Holtz. I worked for Lou and I worked for Charlie. Lou Holtz handled the job very well at Notre Dame. I mean, he's a guy, when the lights are on, Lou's bright. He might be down and out when other times, but when the lights are on, Lou's at his best.
Right.
And he was called upon to do anything by Notre Dame. He did it. I mean, that's 70, 80 speeches a year around the country, around the world.
Right.
Charlie, I won't talk as much about Charlie. He wasn't the same. Wasn't the same availability.
Right.
Same approach. He'd come out of the NFL, in fairness to him, and he just thought it was like running an NFL team where you just take care of the team. Don't worry about all this other peripheral. You can't do that at Notre Dame. It requires a whole lot more. And when it was Brian Kelly, I said, Brian, you are the guy for that job, because he does have the personality and the language and the style and the charisma and the class to handle that job. And he did a good job for 12 years handling it. He had to correct himself. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, he did a self-evaluation. Since then, he's had 4 10-win seasons. Why he took off, you could argue why,
Sure.
I guess
Sure.
10 years, 100 million had something to do with it.
Of course. Of course.
And
Well-
the opportunity to have the LSU roster, year after year after year. So,
Well, one of the things I want to talk to you about, Coach, was, we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but what hurdles did Luke Fickell have to kind of overcome, kind of in the community, in the environment of being a regional school, and now getting on such a large stage?
yeah, Luke took the job over 5 years ago, and he followed Tommy Tuberville. All the
Okay.
guys that followed me, one was Mark D'Antonio, did a good job. Brian Kelly, good job. Butch Jones, good job. They got Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. Tommy had already been at the mountaintop. He was a good
Okay.
coach. Auburn, Ole Miss, Texas Tech. Tommy came in there, but kind of treated it a little bit like a retirement job, and then they retired him. Okay. So he stayed forward, kind of ran it down. Luke takes over. Luke is the perfect Ohio man. He's never lived outside the state. Him and his wife are great Catholic people. Cincinnati is a wonderful Catholic town, about 75%. They got great school systems. So their family fits the culture of the city of Cincinnati. They love it there. He is all Ohio Midwest in his approach to the game. He learned under Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. Two of the very best technical, fundamental, technique, hard recruiters, organization. He learned all that at Ohio State. He spent a lifetime there almost. So he was exactly the right man for the job. They run the strength program exactly the way Mickey runs it over at Mickey Marotti started with me. He goes to Notre Dame and spends 8 or 9 years.
Right.
With Charlie, he goes with Urban to Florida for 6.
Right.
Then he comes with Urban back to Ohio State. So everything in the strength room that was always great with Mickey Marotti and the Cincinnati, Notre Dame, all the way through, is at
Okay.
Cincinnati now. So
Okay.
they were a tough, hard-nosed, physical, kind of a defensive mindset. How you run your program with toughness,
Right.
Mhm.
and they got a tremendous culture there. He's well respected across the Midwest, and he was able to bring a good staff with him that mostly stayed with him outside of a few defections. And then Marcus stayed 4 years, became one of the hottest young coordinators in the country. And but scheme wise, even he brings the Ohio State defense down, 4-man
Right.
line.
Right.
And I was just in his office 2 weeks ago, and he reminded me of the fact. He says, "Coach, I brought my defense down from Ohio State. Man, we were good. We knew what we were doing. We got our butt ran in the ground with this conference, spreading everybody out. We had to revamp and go to a 3-man front.
Right.
Now a 3-man line primarily. Okay, they interject 4, but they're a 3-man 33 nickel type team to compete with the American Conference style of offenses, and they've since become then the number 1 defense in the league every year. Same thing John Haycock did over at Iowa State. He took a 4-man line front first year. They almost got fired, and after that, 33 nickel. There's just a lot of guys that something works. When I came from Notre Dame, it's so fun. I'm coaching Bert and those guys at Notre Dame, right? We never give up a 100-yard rusher, never give up 100 yards total rush. We had 88 yards a game rushing in 93, I think. And I get to Cincinnati, and I lost count by the end of the year how many yards we gave up rushing. And I was following the same defenses, right? But
Wow.
But we had to adjust. We had to adapt. But he has done a great job building a culture there that's second to none.
Okay.
Well accepted in the city. He's turned money and fame doesn't mean anything to him and his wife, Amy. And so they've turned down all kinds of jobs. He turned down Michigan State, turned down this, turned down that. He has not played that game, and he's been patient enough to now all of a sudden Cincinnati's in the Big 12, in 2 years.
Right.
So they need to pay him like he's in the Big 12. They got $100 million campaign going on there now to keep building to catch up with the Big 12.
Right.
So I think he'll ride it out. I mean, I really think he's destined to stay. There's only one job he would leave for, and that's Ohio State.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think he would have taken the Notre Dame job if the things were been different. Timing would have been different.
Sure.
But they lucked out because they got Marcus. And I think he's a rising star. I really do.
That's great. Hey, Bert, being in the Phoenix area, having a chance to participate in a Fiesta Bowl, I mean, what is the Notre Dame team and Oklahoma State, what do they look forward to kind of coming to the bowl game?
The first thing they look forward to is great weather. And that's the big thing why you have the game here in Phoenix, because it's probably going to be in the 60s, 70s. You have to go outside, and you're going to be practicing at a local high school. I think Notre Dame's practicing at Carparelli. Okay. And the team I'm familiar with, my son's team beat them in the state championship game, but that's a story for another day. But you get, I mean, my son, hey, it is what it is. But you get the great weather. There's lots of young people here. It's a very young, vibrant city. Okay. ASU has, I believe, 75,000 kids. Wow. So there's a lot of things to do for people of their age. Okay. And I just think with the atmosphere here and the weather, it's a perfect mix. And I think with Notre Dame coming here so many times for Fiesta Bowls, right? When we were here, it was at Sun Devil, but now it's at State Farm Stadium out there in Glendale. So it's a little bit of a different atmosphere there, but it's still well run. They put a lot of resources into it, and there's going to be lots of activities for both teams to do, and I'm excited. Obviously, having my alma mater in my backyard, I know there'll be a lot of former players here, just mingling in the city and all that kind of good stuff. And so I'm excited to see a lot of old faces and hug a lot of necks and be socially responsible. Obviously, with the pandemic still being an issue and what it is, you have to be a little more responsible, but I'm just looking forward to the atmosphere that week and seeing a lot of faces and hopefully Notre Dame will take this as a business trip and come down ready to set the tone with the Marcus Freeman era and get that off to a great start with the win.
I think that's absolutely fabulous, Coach. We're going to end with you. You talked a little bit about kind of knowing Marcus Freeman. Can you kind of give me your take on kind of what you've seen in him, maybe the last 9-10 years?
I've known Marcus since he played high school football. Okay, at Wayne
Wow.
High School. Saw him sign and go to Ohio State.
Okay.
Got a little short career in the NFL. Then he went into coaching because an injury set in. And I've always heard Marcus Freeman's name in the coaching circles. Had never really met him as a coach. I saw him as a player. And when Luke gets that job at Cincinnati, that's the first guy. So you got to think about their relationship. He was Luke was his position coach, his mentor. They're now like best friends, not father son, but I'm talking about co-best friends of head coach DC, and that lasted for 4 years. It's ironic that they split, and Luke got the best of him at Notre Dame, and that's what catapulted, him into the playoffs. But this guy, I've sat in his staff meetings. I've watched his demeanor on the sidelines. I think, when you just say, does a young guy like this, kind of a whiz kid, do they have the X factor or the it factor? And I just want to give Marcus credit that he's got the it factor. I think he's got a sensitivity about him. He's got a calmness about him. He's got just enough air about him, but it's very humble. You look at his mom, his father's African-American, I believe, and his mother's Asian. Well, who does that?
She's Korean. Yep.
Who does that remind you of? Right.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods.
Right.
Very similar. I mean, when I look at Marcus, I don't say it's Tiger Woods, but there's a figure there that's got a little bit of a mystique to him. Okay, and a little bit of a presence about him. And I give him all the credit in the world. I really do. Mentally, he'll put together. And I was talking to Eric Hansen and those guys up at the Blue and Gold and the papers about the fall. And, because they got off to kind of a shaky start. They could have lost a couple of games real early. But I said, look, just give Marcus time. He's running an entirely different defense than Clark Lee, who I'm working with down here at Vanderbilt, with my son. I mean, Clark was the straight arrow, the 4-man front guy, and did everything good, followed Mike Elko, and it all worked. But I said, Brian Kelly said, okay, that worked. And now let's get the new guy on the block and give him a time and a chance to incorporate. So now they're doing more 3-man fronts, and Florida State about ripped it apart, and then each week got a little bit better. Then judge them on the last 4 or 5 games on defense. I mean, they're like one of the best defense in the whole country.
Sure. Yeah. With shutouts and everything.
And Cincinnati is like top 5 in scoring defense. And I say that because they're still just doing the same things Marcus left. He's going to Notre Dame, and he's going to end up doing it with better dudes up there. And I don't think their recruiting's even gotten started. I mean, I really do. I just read an article where, and it was a little bit of a jab, to be honest with you, BK, when they said this head coach is going to become the point man on all recruiting. He's going to be the central figure that gets to know every guy, calls every guy. Every kid will have his phone number. If he wants to talk to me, he'll get to me. And that wasn't happening with Brian, and it doesn't happen to all head coaches. But Brian did a great job there. But what I was telling you real quick, the other story was when Cincinnati went 12-0 and Brian got that call to go to Notre Dame, he calls me up and all that stuff. He goes, the people at Cincinnati just wrung his neck, like, how can you leave us? That's right. Just how can you leave us? And they've had a hard on for him since then, really, because of that. They're kind of naive, but that's the way it was. Who did Cincinnati have to beat that punched their ticket to the playoffs?
Of course.
Exactly.
Right? It's like payback.
Revenge.
But no, anyway, I think Marcus will do a great job. I thought it was a great job by Jack to name him. The timing worked for Marcus. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, you see the reaction of those players when they named Marcus the head coach.
Right.
It's like anything. Right now it's the party and the honeymoon. He'll be judged a little bit of what happens out here in another week, with Okie State. But I just think give him time. They salvaged and kept a good, strong recruiting class in spite of the defection of the coach. And all the coaches, it's always a testament. Remember when Nick Saban left Florida State, when Nick Saban left Michigan State, 99 December, he goes and gets the LSU job, and he sends a plane to Lansing and says, anybody that wants a job with me at LSU, get on that plane at 5:00 today. Nobody got on that plane.
Wow.
Nobody, except a young Adam Gase. Okay.
Wow.
It came back empty. That's how Nick ended up getting Jimbo Fisher, because he was working with me at Cincinnati. He told me the whole story. That's another day. But he had to start from scratch, is my point, to build a staff. I'm on the
Right.
text with Brian the other day, and I said, hey, listen, anybody coming with you? And he said, I don't think so. I said, well, don't feel like the Lone Ranger. Nick did it 20 years ago. Same way, I had to build a staff from scratch. But the point is, on the flip side, who did these coaches elect to stay with?
Sure. Right.
One, I think they wanted to stay with Notre Dame. Okay. Tommy is a Notre Damer. The strength coach was telling, because he's only been there with Brian for about 4 years. But he said, no, I'm staying. I know my bread's buttered, and I love these kind of kids. They're unlike any other kids in the world. You guys know that. I'm talking to two of them. And this guy will do a great job, as he's already done for years, with the new approach to strength and culture and everything else. And then Tommy steps up and said, by God, I'm staying. I don't care if Mark gets a job. I hope he does, but I'm staying.
Right.
You know what? They're all staying. Outside of BP, Brian, I think, Brian Polling's going to join him down at LSU, which will be good for Brian. He's spent plenty of years. Brian and I were there together in 05-06.
Okay.
He became the head coach. He went back, did it again. Maybe it's time for him to get a breath of fresh air somewhere else too. But it's so good. I mean, Marcus is going to have tons of, I say issues, but challenges to become a head coach for the first time. I don't care.
Sure, absolutely. Right. And then on top of that, it's at Notre Dame.
It happens to be at Notre Dame, the most visible program. So he couldn't have been more blessed to have everything at least stay in place of something that's not broken.
Sure.
And it's one thing to see that you sneak in there and get the job and you're not very good.
Right.
This is a playoff type team that he's taken over. So he can learn on the job so much easier when he's got so much support. He's kind of like you guys were when you came in as a student athlete. In a sense, you couldn't fail because you had so much love and support around you.
Right.
That's the way I feel he's got it as a rookie head coach. He's got support now around him. Things are in place. He's got a great president. He's got a great AD. He's got a good coaching staff that's got continuity. He's got players that love him. He'll be the only one that can screw it up, because it's
right.
And I trust he won't do that. He'll learn. Remember when Pat Fitzgerald had to take over Northwestern, right? Yeah. It's the similar story. It was unexpected, right? It took the what's his name passing away suddenly of a heart attack for him at 33 years old to get elevated into his dream job, probably 5 years earlier than he deserved to be.
Right. Exactly.
And, same with Marcus. He might know was going to be a head coach at a major at 35, but it happened.
Yeah.
It's not so make advantage of it, take advantage of it. And I know he will do that. He's he's a cerebral, he's a caring guy. He's the player. I think the player's reaction tells you everything about what the guy's made of.
Right. Exactly. Well,
they stormed the ship, man, when he got that.
That's great. Coach Bennett, that was great. Thank you so much for being on. Bert, this is great. I want to let folks listening and watching to know that in the next coming months, I'm going to have both of them on my regular weekly podcast because I think that their stories are so amazing. Bert, Phil mentioned kind of your career, and I know there were some situations in the beginning when you weren't sure how it was going to end up, but look where you're at now. So I can't wait to kind of take a deeper dive into kind of those experiences and really kind of what gave you the opportunities, right? I mean, I know it's about working hard, but at the end of the day, you actually could have gone another direction as well.
Yeah, let me just say this to Coach Bennett. Coach, I want to personally thank you for giving me that opportunity at school. It was with you recruiting me. Honestly, I didn't have Notre Dame on the radar, but you and the rest of the coaches there, Coach Cooper, I believe, were very key in me having my opportunity to come to Notre Dame. So I thank you for giving me a chance, a 17-year-old kid, step out on that field and learning that complex defense of yours. I appreciate you giving me that trust back then.
Well, I appreciate you, and I met Chris when I was there and I followed him, but I take so much great pride. I've been so lucky to be at Notre Dame and two different generations of guys. You two guys at 92, 93, and a little bit before and after, and then the group that I went back in 05, 06. All you got to do, and I would challenge all our fans to do that, is to look at LinkedIn Okay, it's such a business oriented model. You
Mhm.
know, get your little thing, you know, put your name on it and all that. I get marveled at I got, thank God for social media, to be honest with you. So Facebook and LinkedIn and those things, because it connects us. You know, it
Sure.
lets us stay in touch with former players, ex players, etc. But I take so much pride and awe when I just scroll down a LinkedIn page at the Domers, okay,
Mm.
at the Domers, and just see how many are out there. And I always say, what are they doing? What are they doing? And it's just
Mm.
like we preached when we were recruiting.
Right.
So this
Right.
is place is a little bit about the next 4 years, but more importantly, it's about the next 40.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
these guys now are living those 40. They're in their primes. You know, they're getting older, you know, and as I'm getting older, but it is such an honor to have known these guys and follow their careers and see their families. And I mean, it was amazing when I came back in 0506 of how many guys that I ran into that were the 92, 93 guys, you know.
Right.
So it's really two different generations altogether. But I've been blessed and honored to have been at Notre Dame twice, to not have played there, but for me to have coached there on two different occasions, man, it helps make my life and my career, you know.
All right. Well, this is absolutely going to be exciting, and like I said, both Coach Minner, and Bernie are going to have a chance to kind of be on. We have a little chance to go in depth, but this is going to be exciting. I'm fired up about not only kind of hearing their stories, but kind of learning from them as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you guys in the future. But thank you for being on the show.
Really appreciate you both, Bertrand. Would love to get you guys on our shows on the network to talk a little bit more about your stuff with no rules. Like this show is a family show. On our shows, we can get really into the discussion with passion and pride. Coach Minner and obviously B-Train sharing his story with Lovie Smith. I know our network focuses in on the Chicago Bears with the tape and everything, but football is the greatest game in the world. It creates men out of boys. And with people like you involved, Coach Minner and Bertrand Berry, he's proud. His son, Chris, has won a state championship. Is that what your pride is?
Yeah, he won a state championship. Daughter graduated from ASU, so
look at you.
The same field all those years ago. My son played there. My daughter graduated there. I mean, it's surreal, man.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you
coaching,
both.
Coaching my son now. You know what I mean? I'm not
exactly.
coaching. My son's the coach and I'm his analyst.
There you go. Well, thank you both for coming on here on the Super 16 Bowl show with Chris Zorich and myself here on the Tape Never Lies Network. Really appreciate you guys a lot.
Appreciate it.
Chris, another.
Yes, that was awesome, man. And I'm not sure how many bowl games you had a chance to talk about, but
no, we're gonna have to
having that in-depth conversation of kind of like, you know, how the teams get chosen. I mean, what happens, and I think that's really interesting for folks. And if we can provide that, why not, right? And they can kind of turn on ESPN and see who's doing what. But I think this also gives folks a chance to really understand that maybe that bowl experience is really a great opportunity for these kids to actually play that one last game.
One last game. I think Coach Minner knocked it out of the park. There is a reality to football, and dedicating your life to it to get to the point where you have brought this team to get to a bowl game and then deciding that your professional career is more of a priority to you than playing and finishing out something like when he used the kid from Pitt. And I think it's the perfect example that you've decided now I'm going to put myself over my teammates. You only got there because of your teammates. It's a very questionable and selfish act. Finish the story. Finish the story. You've played this way your whole entire life. I think that young man's going to have especially at that position. At quarterback. I mean, if he's a corner, then we can talk. And it's no disrespect to other positions, but let's just face it. There's a reason why each and every draft, NFL draft, you're looking for the next franchise signal caller. It's pretty important. So,
and at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of these guys are worried about getting injured. There are insurance policies, and I'm not saying our system is perfect, but if that's an issue, they found a way to address it. And it's not just, hey, one more game out of you.
Great point.
That, a lot of guys go, well, hey, it's a business, you're being used. But at the end of the day, man, when you get my age, you think about those games, man. You think about, you're not thinking about wow, I was used by Notre Dame. You think about the love you have for your brothers on that team and having the chance to play. And Nick he said it great, right? I mean, who wouldn't give a chance to play one more game with your boys? Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. I dream about it all the time. And then, in everything we do here, Chris, as we close this show out, there's no script, there's no bias. Obviously, Chris has a rooting interest based on his he's an alumnus to Notre Dame, a 3-time All-American, drafted in the second round by the Chicago Bears. So, but analyzing and going over these things, that having great guests on here talking about this game, I didn't know what to expect today, but I just sat back and took it all in. Coach Minner is like an encyclopedia.
Yeah, that was awesome, man. That was awesome.
So that's going to be, and we're going to wrap out. We're going to go out. I'm going to play what Coach Minner was talking about and Coach Freeman being intro to.
Okay, give me 1 second.
But I want to give you exactly. You're cutting me off. I was giving you the stage.
I didn't know what you were doing, man. I didn't.
I'm setting this up because we don't.
This is what happened.
We don't talk.
Exactly.
We can't talk. So I'm like, I'm gonna end the show with that. But I want to give Chris Zorich his moment to finalize his thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm finalizing my thoughts, and you'll have a chance to. So what I do want to get in is a shameless plug for our next 2 bowl shows. I mentioned before, next Monday, January 3rd, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do a bowl show talking about the semifinals, what Notre Dame did, and everything else. Then on Monday, January 10th, we're actually going to have an hour pre-show of the national championship game. And I believe that's 7 as well. I'm not sure. Just check our social media. We'll get it out there. And then we're also going to do a post kind of analyzing the game as well. So I think that'll be very exciting. And this was all Phil's idea, because at the end of the season, we're like, okay, now what do we do? You're like, dude, let's do bowl shows. Like, how cool is this?
Yeah. And then we'll be live breaking down the national championship game. Me, Chris, will have some guests on to break it all down, what happened, just like we do with Bears Hour Live after the final whistle blows with the Chicago Bears. We'll go live just like that, breaking down the national championship. I want to thank Ron G. I know he worked hard on getting the graphics out, but we did show one graphic, Ron, the Notre Dame one, but we'll be using those obviously in the weeks to come as we go back and talk about these great games and go into depth about what is going on, who are the standouts, guys going into the draft, like the quarterback from Pitt, all of that. So, Chris, now do you have any other final thoughts, or you're good?
Yes. We had a chance to kind of listen or hear what the bowl season or the bowl opportunities do for coaches and players. And I think oftentimes that's kind of missed, because I know for me, just kind of a freak fan that I am, I'm sitting there watching, seeing what team goes where, but what I don't really think about a lot, and I think had a chance to kind of listen to these guys, are the individuals who are involved, the players, the student athletes, the families, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, I think, and I was fortunate enough, as was Bertrand, after our last game, we actually had a chance to play again, right? But I'm thinking about the hundreds, the thousands of guys who, like, this is their last game, and how important that was. that they had a chance to participate, and they were rewarded for having that success they had during the year. And so oftentimes, so when you guys watch these games, because there's going to be a whole bunch of them on, just kind of think about those guys out there, those seniors. Man, this is the last game they're going to play. You know, because what's the percentage? 0.0002 that have a chance to go to the NFL. You know, so now these guys are going to hang up their helmets, their pads for the last time. So when you guys are watching this and your team may not win, but just kind of understand like where those guys are at, because I think you can kind of hear the passion from the coaches, from Nick, from Bert, about kind of how exciting this moment is, and now having the chance to kind of experience it, you know, for the last time. And exactly. I think that's one of those things that you just want to kind of keep in bottle forever. And I think Nick had a great point in saying, you know, who would want to go back and play for their team one more time?
I think that resonated with you the most.
Well, I started thinking, you know, I'm getting a little chills here. I'm starting to think about it because, I mean, I was fortunate enough. I had a chance to go on, but, you know, a lot of these guys didn't. Right. And so, you know, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, kind of thinking about what that meant. I know for me, and I'll find it for our next show, but there's this amazing, iconic Notre Dame picture of me after my last game, my senior year. And I'm sitting down on the bench. We just lost to to Colorado. And I'm bawling. I'm crying. Mm-hmm. And interesting enough, when I was talking to Bert before we were able to schedule him on the show, he talked about how he remembers seeing that as a young kid. And there was a reporter, I forgot who it was. He put a mic in my face. He's like, "Christian, what's going on? How are you feeling?" And, you know, I was sobbing. I mean, I was heaving. Mm-hmm. And this emotion was, man, I had just played my last game at Notre Dame. Like, from this kid who thought Notre Dame was in France to, you know, being on the shit squad, getting the crap beat out of me, and having a chance to play, to start, become an All-American, win the Lombardi Award, and this is it. Like I'm done playing college, man. So I'm going to find it because it's really cool. And there's a Notre Dame artist, Kathleen Kiefer, who wound up doing a great image of it. I'll bring it for the next show. But, you know, I'm just starting to think about that. I was like, man, like, how about all those guys? Like, this is their last game. So that's kind of my last thing, is that, you know, when folks are watching these games, I mean, understand that for the majority of these guys, these men that you're watching, this is the last game they're going to play, a game that they've loved, that they've played since they were like 6, 7, 8, 10 years old. And, you know, this is over. So, again, your team may not win, but just kind of enjoy it and watch it for that perspective. He's
Chris Zorich, every week coming on this network, breaking it down. Couldn't say it any better than that. I, unfortunately, don't remember my last game. I had a concussion. So
there you go. See?
But to your point, you know, I wish I could go back and play one more time. And
who doesn't, though? I mean,
that's anybody. If anybody's put on the pads or helmet, they are in those same shoes, I believe. If they love this game of football, and those of you that have never played, I think are in that. I wish I could play as well. I've heard it my whole life. So great way to end a great show, breaking down bowl season, what it means. You had Bertrand Berry. I want to thank him, Coach Minter, for coming on, spending some time with us, as well as Nick Capillari. Is that how we say it? Capillari.
Come on, I mean,
he's from your town. Capper or Capar?
Right. Capper. Really?
Okay, it's
Capper. It's not that hard. Nick, we're gonna get Nick back on.
I know. I love
the next pronunciation of his
I remember Nick's
dad.
And
he's a Connecticut kid. Come on, man.
My dad, I know, knows them. So great show. We're gonna go out watching how Marcus Freeman gets responded, what Coach Minter was talking about. as we set you up for the bowl season. We'll be live on Bears Hour Live Monday night, tomorrow night, as Bears face off against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun, a lot of enjoyment going on there.
Be nice.
I'll throw a few Chris Zorich shout outs there, and we'll be back here breaking down all the bowls as they transpired and getting you ready for the national championship.
We're extremely proud of you guys on your focus and your ability to lock in all week long this week, okay? It was awesome to see, awesome to be a part of. It shows who you are, your DNA, your mental toughness, your physical toughness, the way you compete, the way you care about each other. Okay, that's what this team run is going to be about. Competing, getting after it with mental and physical toughness, and being the best in the country at what we do. So we ready to do that? Yes, sir. All right, so what I'm going to do now, okay, because you're brand new head football coach.
Thanks for watching the Super 16 Poll Show with Chris Zorich. Like, subscribe, and comment. This has been a special presentation of the Tape Never Lies Network. Performance over